Joining us here from Sports Illustrated, our friend Albert Breer is back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Albert? Good to see you.
Good. How you doing, Rich? Sorry, I'm coming in hot today.
What are you doing? What do you mean you're coming in hot? What do you mean?
No. I might be 30 seconds late. I'm just handling a bunch of off-season stuff today, so all good.
Are you sure you weren't in like Peru dropping ayahuasca or something like that?
No. I haven't been to South America today. No.
Peru. Albert, where is Aaron Rodgers? Albert, where's Aaron?
The best I can answer this right now, that I feel solid about, is that he is somewhere that they could not excuse and maintain credibility with the rest of the locker room, but would be expected, would not be an out of left field thing for him. So you guys can open your mind, so to speak, as he's been known to open his mind sometimes into all the possibilities that might create for you.
So you're spilling just a little tea, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I think like the one thing that I think is important here, and like I want to first say what I know, and then I'll tell you what I think. You know, like what I know is that Robert Saleh, the coaching staff, the front office, they were apprised of this. And so there was open dialogue about this. And so, really over the last 2 months, he's been a very engaged member of the off-season program. He was last year too, which is a lot more than you could say for really the last half decade he was in Green Bay, right? So he's done more, and there's no question about that. And so, like he told them that he had something he didn't want to miss, and that he was going to be away for the last week of the off-season program, which is when the mandatory minicamp is. They communicated to him that they wouldn't be able to excuse him for that. And again, it's because that's how you maintain credibility with your locker room. You can't do something for one person that you wouldn't do for other stars of the team, let alone like guys on down the roster, right? Like, if you wouldn't do this for Hassan Reddick, or you wouldn't do this for Garrett Wilson, or you wouldn't do this for Sauce Gardner, you can't really do it for Aaron Rodgers. And it sounds to me, at least, like Aaron had an understanding of that. So he understands that they can't excuse it, and he understands if fines come. Like he gets that. Apparently, he's on board with it. Now, there's the information part of this that is making it much worse, right? Which is, if this had come out 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and this part of it's what I think, if this had come to light a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we're not talking about this, right? Like if Robert Saleh gets up there at the podium last week and says, yeah, this is going to be Aaron's last week, there's a prearranged thing that he want to take part in next week. He won't be here for that. We're not going to excuse it, but per our team policy, but like we just want to give everybody a heads up. This would be much less of a story. It becomes a story because we're finding out right when it happens. And so, now it looks the same way, CeeDee Lamb staying away, or Hassan Reddick or Amari Cooper staying away looks, right? Like where it looks like this is some sort of statement when maybe it's not.
Well, okay. So
although the statement would be, I mean, like to me, again, this is what I think, Rich, right? Isn't there a because I can element to this, right? Like, why are you doing this? Because I can, right? Because I'm Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
that's one way to look at it, Albert. I personally, just not saying I know the guy, but I mean, I've covered him, and I I know people who know him, and I have spoken to him, in the past, but not about this subject matter. It strikes me, the way I was saying it, is the offense is essentially his, right? The offensive coordinator has the title as such, but he's the offensive coordinator. It's just, it's basically Nathaniel Hackett is there to help the process for Rodgers' offense that he wants to run.
Guys.
Pretty well, or to coach Aaron, but I mean to come up with schemes that Aaron know, or plays that he may know that Aaron wants to do, or Aaron can change it, or
install.
Right. Yeah. So the offense is installed. He's cool with it. He's ready to go. All right. Like as far the one thing that he needs to do, maybe, is get his mind right. And if that's what he's doing right now, doing that. Yeah. Then that's just as important as he thinks as doing the mandatory minicamp and all that sort of stuff. It's just that's the way that I view it. And he told the Jets, and they're like, listen, man, like, if that's what you're doing, we can't excuse it or whatever. But for And also, like, if the team and the players are cool with it and he's cool with it, like, internally there's no discord, and that's all that matters to them. They have to know, though. They have to know where they're residing in the New York City metropolitan area. Yeah. They have to know this. They have to know that if they're going to play it like this, the way it would be received and to know basically that bridge is out and they had this much run up of roadway to get to the bridge. Why they would just floor it and go right into the abyss makes no sense at all. I mean, the Bucs had, as we know, a couple summers ago, Brady had a 2-week respite from training camp. And they let folks know in advance this is going to happen. And obviously there was a full-on conversation as to why he was gone. But they got it out there. There's also, you can't move training camp. Why don't the Jets switch weeks of when they're holding the minicamp?
Yeah.
If they had months of heads up, why didn't they make the week before the mandatory minicamp when Rodgers was there? I don't get that.
When there were a bunch of teams that did that. Right. There were a bunch of teams that did have the mini camp last week and then have a couple last OTAs this week. And if you're having OTAs this week and you're having mini camp last week, well, then Aaron Rodgers missing the OTAs is no big deal. Right?
Yeah. Like it's just that he's just not there. He's excused, and I don't understand.
Well, that would be voluntary. The OTAs would be voluntary.
Right, exactly.
So
right. Yeah. And it would come out as just him being, there's that quirky guy going off to, if he does, some spot, some destination spot to get his mind right. Isn't that crazy? He's just a little, he's Aaron Rodgers. And we would just, I don't understand it.
It opens the door to speculation.
That's the thing.
And it opens the door to all of us talking about it and all of us speculating.
But if it doesn't matter to them, I guess if they're all good inside the building, but the conversation outside the building is so unflattering that I don't know how it doesn't affect something.
I mean, like ayahuasca is now like a trending topic on Twitter, probably, right? Like, well, why is that? Because this door has been opened. And I think that part of it is important because it's just like, and again, like I'm not saying it's going to affect the way that they go to training camp. And I'm with you. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers being in the right mental space at his age to play a full season and go through a 17-game season and come back from the Achilles injury is paramount. That's really important. And I'm with you. Like, I think the management of it is where we can ask those questions. And how are you managing this situation? And if we had known about this a couple of weeks ago, it's still a story, but it's less of one, right? And like where this becomes an issue now is like, well, if Aaron's away this week, well, all right, when is he going to address this? Well, not until at least next week, right? Or the week after that, or whenever he decides to do it. And until then, he's left a lot of other people to answer for him, right? Like if he had gone on, I don't know, like let's say he went on McAfee and just spilled it last week. This is a lot less of an issue. You know what I mean? This is not a problem as much, at least, where if he explained it. I think the unfortunate part is now you've left Robert Saleh and you've left your teammates in a position where that's all they're going to be asked about, right? Like, and so, over the course of the 3-day mini camp, so much focus is going to be on the guy who's not there. And because he's not there to explain it, like that leaves all of you to explain it. And so I think that's part of it. And then of course, like there's the other part of it, which is if Aaron goes out and throws 16 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions in the first month of the season, you know how many people are talking about this?
0.
0.0. But if they stumble out of the gate, what are people going to be pointing back to? So there's that part of it too. The same way, by the way, like people, like when Brady, when the Bucs, and I believe they were 8-9 that year. Now they won the division and they rallied and everything else, but there were points that year where people pointed back to Brady missing the 2 weeks in training camp, right? Like this sort of becomes the same thing now, which seems ridiculous because it's 3 days in June, but it does feel like the door's been open because of the handling of it.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. What happened with the league investigation of the Falcons that caused them to, as they say, dock them a 5th-round selection, I believe, in next year's draft, and fine the general manager, Terry Fontenot, $50,000 for tampering. Is that officially what they're calling it? With their what do we got?
So I this has sort of been a big process, and I think part of the issue here, and I feel like I can speak a little bit more freely about this now, is there are situations in the NFL. I'm just talking broad strokes here, right? There are situations in the NFL where everyone agrees that it would be good for things to go one way, right? And for certain things to happen at a certain speed. And I do think, like, for everyone involved in the Kirk Cousins situation through those weeks in March, there was an agreement that the best thing for everybody, whether it was Kirk's camp, whether it was the Falcons, whether it was the Vikings, whether it was anybody else, Denver, whoever thought about dipping their toe in those waters, the best thing for everybody in that circumstance was for Kirk Cousins to agree to terms as close to noon on that Monday as possible. And so sometimes when there's an agreement that that's the best thing, there's some looking the other way that goes on, right? And the league does have to come down on that stuff, but this feels like one of those situations to me where there was a lot of, I think, people in all spots there agreed that the best thing for the Falcons, the best thing for the Vikings, the best thing for every team involved was for Kirk to make a decision quickly so everybody could move on. And because it did happen quickly, it helped the Vikings pivot and go get Sam Darnold. It affected the way the Falcons were planning going forward from there as well. It helped everybody. It helped Kirk, right? Like, it helped Kirk. So, I do think that this is one of those scenarios where this is a little bit of a victimless crime, and this stuff happens more than people know. And I don't know that the league really wanted to open some Pandora's box where it's like, okay, now we're coming down really hard on this, and now are we going to be chasing a half dozen cases, like it every single year?
So they just ticketed him for going
jaywalking.
Yeah, is it jaywalk, right? Tamper walking or something like that?
Yeah,
Because why? Because Cousins basically decided I don't want to go here anymore. And
I feel like this is simply because of the PR part of it, because it got out there, right? And because some of the things, there were some people that slipped, and because some people slipped and said some things, it just, like, I think that's why, is like, because it's out there. And I think this almost feels to me like the league saying, you know what, we have to do something. All right, guys, like, let's figure out something. We will handle it the way we need to handle it. We know that these things happen sometimes. We can't, everybody knows where the line is, and everybody knows, like, that you can, take a couple steps over that line. Just don't dance over it. Just don't spit on the line. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, that's what it feels like a little bit to me, where this is jaywalking, but it's just a reminder to everybody. Just don't be blatant about it when you do it. But we understand that these things happen sometimes, and in a lot of cases, they're victimless crimes that benefit the parties involved.
So what was it? They reached out to him too soon? Is that what it was?
Yeah. I mean, it was the communication part of it. Yes, is what was at issue here. And I mean, look, like, I do think, again, like, to me, like, the Vikings, I guess, if you want to, put this in the terms of a court of law, the Vikings would be the plaintiff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the plaintiff, like, I don't think that this was like something that they were fervently like, yes, we want charges pressed here. You know what I mean? Like, now maybe there were some people in the building that felt that way, but I know a lot of people didn't. Like, I don't think this was that big a deal to the Vikings, which is probably a pretty big part of the league's decision making here too. And again, like, I think you look at the end result, and the end result is that, like, the Vikings wind up, being able to move very quickly on another quarterback because the Kirk thing got done fast, and the Kirk thing doesn't get done that fast. I mean, no one's under the illusion that the Kirk deal or any of these other deals that get reported at like 12:22 or 12:34 or whatever else on that Monday, no one's under the illusion that everybody just snapped their fingers and made those deals come to life.
Well, I mean, there is a window, if you will, that is now legal in which to talk to somebody. And I guess what you're saying essentially is that the fact that Cousins left Minnesota isn't because the Falcons reached out too soon. It's just that Cousins was gone based on the knowledge of their conversations with him, and that was the end of it. unless
Right.
there's other people in the building that think
I think it
otherwise.
was. I think it was. It was down the line.
Right.
Like I don't think. I don't think anything was done. No. But like I think everybody. I would say like I think everybody had a good idea of what the landscape was.
Right.
And I think the Falcons were able to push it over the goal line afternoon on that Monday. But like again, like I mean, look, when I was young covering the league, you probably remember this combine. You know, Rich, like like you remember like how like the combine used to be right before free agency,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember like it was like the combine like ended on like Wednesday and then like Friday at midnight the free agency started. I remember like there was this one steakhouse. I think it was like I can't remember if it was like it was not Prime or one of those or
Right.
St. Elmo's, but it was like it was Ruth's Chris. It was somewhere that was like relatively out in the open.
Yeah.
Like Dan Snyder was out to dinner with like Albert Hainsworth's agent. You know what I mean? Like everyone saw it. It's just like all right, like and then it gets done like in the wee hours of that Friday morning. It's I mean, we all know what happened.
So, last one on this one, I guess.
You have to remember that,
Oh,
right?
sure. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And
You remember that one.
especially since the combine. I mean, everybody just goes out and about. So I guess if they lost the draft choice in 2025, it's a good thing they got their quarterback of the future already, huh, Albert?
Yeah,
Atlanta?
the hope of getting Tom Brady in the fifth round in
Apparently they nailed
2025 is now gone for the
There you go,
Falcons.
there you
So
go.
good thing they took Michael Penix, eighth overall.
I couldn't end that conversation without taking one last gratuitous shot at this situation. Okay, so last one for you. As you're mapping out your summer, if you could have your druthers and go to one training camp for the opening, to be there physically at the opening of this training camp, it would be which one, Albert?
Chargers.
It's not because you miss Jim so much, right? Or it's not because you
want
to come to Los Angeles.
Give him a high five.
No, but
yeah.
why
No,
the Chargers?
You know what?
Why?
You know what? I say that, and that might be where I start. And the reason why, Rich, is because I think it's so cool that there are gonna be 5 camps right there. You know what I mean? Like I think the fact that we have this version of the cheese league that's out there, and I don't think that they're going to be able to scrimmage with each other quite as much as you used to see back in the day, because I think some of those teams play each other in the regular season. Obviously the Chargers and Raiders are in the same division. But having the Raiders and the Chargers and the Rams and the Saints and the Cowboys all out there at once. I know at one point the Texans had preliminary talks about going out there. It's like a really cool thing. So I think the Chargers camp is going to be really interesting. I think what Jim Harbaugh can do in recreating again what he created at Stanford, at San Francisco, and then at Michigan over the last 9 years is fascinating. What that'll mean for Justin Herbert is fascinating. How he runs a training camp, having come from the college game, I think we'll be able to see some things just in the way that their operation, works in practice. I think that part of it will be really, really fascinating. So they're interesting. I think the other ones that are interesting, Miami with Tua, obviously Green Bay with Jordan Love, and then the Cowboys. Like if all this stuff is still hanging out there, and you and I have talked a ton about this over the last few weeks, but like, are we taking attendance? Like if you're a Cowboys beat writer, are we taking attendance on the curbside at the hotel there, in Oxnard, and waiting to see if Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, and CeeDee Lamb check into that Residence Inn? Like that one's really, really interesting to me too, and how it affects the way that team's able to go through a full training camp. I think will be really, really interesting.
If I had a guess on that front, I think Micah checks in. I think Dak's the first to check in. I think Dak might actually stand behind the counter and check others in. I think he will be
Yeah.
there in that respect. The CeeDee Lamb, I'd have to wonder about that one. That's the one I would wonder about, Albert.
Here's the other one that's interesting to me is Chicago. Is like just Caleb Williams has made such a good early impression there. And like everything is so positive there. And like you look at the setup, like this is not like a startup, like they're in their 3rd year building.
Mm-hmm.
I am wondering if like that's the camp where we get like these reports like, holy crap. And, you see the clips go up on Twitter, right? Like, holy crap, this throw Caleb made. You know what I mean? Like I just have sensed so much positivity coming out of that place. Chicago is going to be one I'll be excited to go to, because I think it just, and his skill set too plays into it, of course. But like, I could certainly see like where we have like a couple of wow moments early in camp that go viral on social media.
I can't wait. All right. So now that I know your plans, got a plan to be in this chair to my right, Albert.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully
Seriously,
a little darker than I am now.
No, that's all right. You'll already have a few weeks of Nantucket, hopefully under your belt. And then you'll come out here and let's plan on it. Thanks.
Absolutely. I'll be there.
You're the man. Thanks, brother. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Have a good Father's Day weekend. That's Albert Breer
You
right
too.
here.
Happy Father's Day to you and all you guys over there.
Thanks, pal. That's Albert Breer, everybody, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.